Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Life and Sound podcast. I'm your host, Kid Capone. Today, I have an amazing guest, a guy I've been a fan of for a long time since I very first heard of him through Polyphonic Music Library, a guy who has an incredible library of music, big player in the community, inspiration to many of us, as I know, Al Hug. He's worked with Chance the Rapper. He's worked on so many great records that have been coming out as of late, even things with Headie One, H, plenty of great stuff. And I'm just so excited to have him on the show, and we just get to sit down and chat. Al, how you doing this morning?
Thanks for having me. I'm very good. It's still early in the morning, but I'm ready to start the day with a interview I've wanted to do for a while, and I'm glad you asked me to do this now. So I'm excited to be here.
Appreciate that, man. Yeah, I know you're a busy guy, and sometimes it's hard to line schedules up, but I'm glad you got to be on the show, and we're just going to chat, and it's going to be real friendly. I know you're going to have a lot of great gems of information to share, good knowledge, so just thank you so much, man.
Of course.
All right, we'll start with some of the easier questions, then later on in the interview we'll move into the technical stuff, VSTs, plugins, things like that, but we'll start off smooth and just go on from there.
Sure.
Where did you get the brand name Minta Foundry? Where did that concept kind of come from?
Oh, okay. Actually, Minta as a brand, I created that with my friend Dennis, aka Faison, who is kind of my partner with this whole Minta Foundry thing. And also, just we've been making music forever together. We played in a band together. And actually, we would have very long car rides between shows in, touring Germany and Austria and France and so on. So we'd have like 8-hour car drives a day, which in European car drive lengths is enormous. It's just incredible. You don't do this every day. So we'd have a lot of time to talk and invent shit. So we would just invent gear that would be practical. We would play a show the night before, and then the next day he would be, what would be super helpful if I had a pedal that would do this and this. So we would just come up with stuff. None of us had any background in any technical background or engineering background, so it was really just like inventing stuff that would be nice to have. And parallel to that, I was in a artist residency in summer of, I think it was like 2017. This was way before I even started making samples. This was just, at that time I was executive producing my own band and touring with that band, and it was very synth heavy, not a lot of acoustic instruments, none of the stuff that I use now. And I was in this artist residency, and it was in a abandoned chocolate factory, which is very cliche that we as Swiss people would go to abandoned chocolate factory in Switzerland to do an artist residency. But anyway, there were a couple people there, journalists, politicians, musicians, artists, whatever, like a whole bunch of different people. And there was this also abandoned military kitchen there with big pans and whole bunch of shit. And I had my Zoom recorder, and I went in there and just started recording one-shots because I didn't have all my instruments, my studio with me, so I kind of just needed sounds to work on my music, right? And so I made my first sample pack without really knowing what a sample pack was or intending of distributing it or whatever. I was just making it for myself, and then I was using it on my computer, and people saw it and were like, "Oh, what are you doing?" And I explained, and they were like, "Oh, can you send me the sounds?" So that's when I started kind of distributing it for the first time. And I talked to this with my friend Dennis on a car of one of those car rides, and then he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna make you a website for it." And I was like, "Oh, I mean, if you want," because I was just sending out Dropbox links. He was like, "Oh, let me make you a website because I don't have anything better to do right now. So let me build a website for you." And then he just came up with the word Minta out of nowhere, basically. And it's kind of then we researched it, and I think I should research this actually. I can't remember if it's Polish or another language that I can't remember. But Minta means to kind of recycle and reuse. So there is a meaning to it, but it's purely coincidental. Yeah, and that was before, and then we didn't use the brand at all, because then I started to make samples that didn't really make the sample packs to sell. And then later on, I was just like, when I was like, I need a brand for all my packs, I kind of reused the same brand that we had back then.
I love that. Yeah. Where was like the foundry like word kind of like came from?
Yeah, that's also Dennis's idea. He has a graphic designer background. He never really worked as a graphic designer, but he was just very interested in graphic design. And when you buy fonts, for a design project, usually you buy them on a font foundry, which is basically like a label for fonts, because we would have different font designers, and all those designers would collectively distribute their fonts through a font foundry.
Okay.
And I was, like always, I tried to be a bit different, not too different, but just kind of like, so that's why I didn't want to call it Minta Library or Minta Sound Library or Music Library or whatever, because I just felt like it has been done a lot of times, and it's fine. I could have gone that route too, but whenever I come up with something that is very obvious, I just pause and I'm like, how can I change it just a little to make it a bit more special, a bit more different, to kind of get like, just take a small detour and be a bit different. Not too different, because if you go too different, then you end up in a whole different market and nobody cares about your shit anymore. So you have to be, not too experimental, but just a tiny bit.
Yeah, it's like a good term I've always heard is like be familiar yet unexpected.
Yes, I like that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, because, if it's, like you said, if it's too different, people can't connect with it. But if it's something just a little bit off kilter or off center, it resonates with them more because it feels fresh yet still familiar. I love that.
Yeah.
When you and Faison were on these long car rides, you touched a little bit on coming up with, useful guitar pedals or things you wish you had. And then I know you created this amazing pedal called Lewis. Is that kind of an inspiration that came from those car rides, and then it became a design and then brought to fruition in real life?
Oh, yes, 100%. It was the second thing we kind of invented. The first thing was an expression splitter. So imagine you have an expression pedal that you can use as a volume pedal or as a control pedal for another guitar pedal. You can only connect this to one pedal at a time. And there is no way of using Y cables because it's all analog, so the signal would just flow in all directions. So that doesn't work. And the idea was to create a device that would let you split one signal into 4 so that you could control multiple pedals at the same time. That was the first idea. It was called the expression splitter. That was what we were talking about. And it's funny because we weren't the only ones in the car. We were like 5 to 6 people. And the other ones were just like, oh no, not again. They're talking about the expression splitter again.
I love that though. I mean, that just goes to show you like, having these ideas that come from a collective thought, not just your own thoughts, but something where you can bounce, before it's even made. It's like you're bouncing the concept off one another and asking each other, is this useful? How can we use this? How would this apply to musicians who are in similar positions as us? And then to carry that all the way through to like an end result, like something like the expression splitter, like Lewis, like that's just an amazing journey to me. And I feel like that's something useful people can learn. It's like collaboration, not only in samples or in music, but collaboration of just sharing ideas can really shape an idea and bring it to life.
Yeah, it's definitely something I can recommend is working as a team, but with like very strong individual roles. A lot of stuff in Minta Foundry I come up on myself, and a lot of stuff Dennis Faison comes up on his on his own. But then we would always meet and talk about stuff and just bounce ideas off each other, and that just helps just get another perspective. And then we kind of just everyone goes to their goes to work on their own, and just okay, I make the pack, for example, he makes the artwork. It's not like a collective when you would like build, for example, a collective when you're 16 where you do everything together and you have to do everything together, and that person didn't do his part, so now I'm angry. It's all about like you need very strong individual roles, but then do something together, and that will help you just do it for longer, because it's more fun. And if stuff can happen in life, if one person can't work on the project for a couple of weeks, there's another person who can take over and be like, don't worry about it, I'll do the upload, you just go do your thing, whatever you have to do. And then another time it's going to be different, so it's also a bit less pressure on yourself.
I agree. I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, and the cool thing is when you build something from scratch and you have the same expectations, which is very important too, kind of have the same expectations, then you don't make any money in the beginning. Well, nobody makes money, and when you start to make money, you just split. So it's a lot easier than to hire a graphic designer, to hire someone to do the copyright, to hire someone to do that, to hire someone. Then you're just spending money. But if you're building everything from scratch and you do everything on your own, you don't spend any money. You just spend your time, and then as soon as you start to make money, you just split it in any way you agree on. It doesn't have to be 50-50. It could be something else,
I agree 100%. I know I'm even in the process right now. There's a friend of mine. His name is Daniel Ramirez. He goes by the production name Saint, and he's somebody.
I know him.
Yeah, he's amazing. I love Saint. He lives near me. Incredible guy.
Amazing.
He's somebody I recently connected with like about a year ago, I want to say, and he went from daily uploading beats every day for a year. Like that's what he was doing. He was just a goal he did, and he accomplished it, and I'm so proud of him for doing that. And now he's transitioning into doing samples full time, because he sees it as something that's like really, he grew up playing instruments. He knows how to sing, and he's like, how can I apply this into something that brings me more joy than just grinding away making beats in a very heavy market that's very saturated. And he and I are working together now, and we're wrapping up a free pack that we're finishing that's going to have it's a toolkit. It's got some samples in there. It's got Mellotron presets. It's got RC20 presets, Effect Rack presets, and we're just doing it together. We're going to give it out for free, and we keep making samples together, and we're kind of setting a goal of finishing something, whether that's a preset pack or an Arturia bank or something like that every month. And being able to do that together and bounce ideas and work off somebody, and we're just splitting everything evenly. And there's no oh, I did this much on this sample and you only did this much, so the split's going to be off or anything. It's just something that's mutually collective, and we're splitting everything 50-50. And there's some samples in the pack where it's I did a majority of it, and he just added some vocal runs and some great voice textures, and I'm like, that's perfect, man. I have no problem splitting that with you, because it's not even always just the product. It's the action of working with somebody and the joy that it brings you from finding somebody you connect with and you're in harmony with musically. I love that.
Yeah. I like working in groups of two. As soon as it's more than two people, I get a bit stressed, to be honest, because I think a lot about, well, what is going to happen if that and that and that, It's just, let's say you're a collective, 3-4 people, make samples together, split everything. One person gets a placement, you split it through 4 or whatever, or 5 or whatever. That I hope it works. I hope it works out. But if it doesn't, it could get very ugly. So just, be sure to think about that and make sure that you are the right person for such a collective. I know that there are people who can't absolutely make it work. I believe in that. But I also know that people who don't actually feel comfortable in those situations get dragged in and then don't find the way out, and then it could become a problem for them. So just figure out for yourself if it's the right move to work in a collective or not.
I agree 100%. And I definitely agree with the working with two people, like or one-on-one with somebody is a lot easier to manage than working with multiple people.
Yeah, one-on-one is perfect. It's perfect.
Especially if you both have like similar views or you have just slightly different enough views and approaches to things to where you're constantly inspiring one another. You're like, oh, wow, this person approaches something in more of a pop style. And, like when Saint and I work together, it's like he has certain chords that he likes to gravitate towards. And then I'm somebody where it's like I like to gravitate towards weirder, diminished chords and things that he wouldn't normally use. But then when you meld the two styles together, you're just creating this unique thing that doesn't sound like either of you, but ends up being this great product in the end that you're both like, wow, I didn't even know we can make something this cool.
Yeah.
I love that. So backing up a little bit, when you were making Lewis, what was the idea and the concept behind that, like production and creating your own pedal? Because that's definitely like on a bucket list of things that I want to do in my life is create some sort of pedal.
Well, from the expression splitter, that was the first idea. We went to the second idea, which was Lewis, which is a guitar expression pedal, LFO. It's a guitar expression LFO pedal. So basically what it does, it mimics your foot just doing that on the expression pedal all the time in different speeds, different waveforms, and different intensities. Basically, it does that for you. It's a low frequency oscillator that can control the expression input on your guitar pedals. We had this idea just because when Dennis was like, oh, when I'm playing, it would be amazing if the delay I could add an additional wobble to the delay, or he had this incredible Moog drive pedal, which also had a filter. It would be amazing if I could use like an LFO on that. So that's how the idea was born, and the only thing we had to do is figure out how to build it, and it took us, I think, 3 to 4 years or something. It was a very long process. Wow. In the beginning, we tried to do everything ourselves, like breadboarding the thing, trying to research how would that even be done. And oh man, I learned so much about like digital potentiometers, about optocompressors and all. Like there's so much stuff. It's incredible. And what I learned there especially is, you might have seen that graph, that when you start to research something new that you have no knowledge about, you in the first like days you feel like, oh, this is I can definitely do this. This is easy, you know. It's just like boom, you get all this new knowledge. You're like, wow, this is amazing. I'm gonna in like a week I'm done, you know. And then you start to realize how big that topic is, or how many things you actually need to know to be good at in this certain field. And then it gets very frustrating because then you kind of start from the bottom, you know. So I learned that, and then we found another guy who could help us with the design of the PCB. And yeah, it was a long process, and we're still working on it. We're working on new functions, we're working on new designs. We have other pedals that are in prototype stage. They fully work. It's just at this point we are trying to figure out if it's a pedal that anybody would use or buy or whatever. And it's not going to be only guitar pedals. It's also going to be like desktop kind of devices and shit. But I can't talk about it too much right now because it's just I have to keep it secret for
You got to keep the people, interested and like wanting to know more. But I love that you're even shedding light a little bit on it and giving us excitement and hope for what's coming next. Because I know I'm definitely excited for whatever you have in store, because you always put out great work. So I'm definitely excited to see what happens next with that.
No, thank you so much.
Of course. What are sort of other future plans for yourself and the Minta Foundry brand right now?
Well, I think 1 week ago I wouldn't have talked about it, but now I think I can slowly start to talk about it. Like for now, Minta Foundry and all the packs I released, it was me and collaborators that I brought on the project. But with Ella Feingold on the Mellotron expansion packs, I was using some of her sounds in the pack with came one from Hijo de Ramon Music Library. We did a pack together. I'm working on a pack with AJ Hall right now, a drum breaks pack.
Man, I'm excited. I love AJ's stuff, man. He's the best. I want to get him on here soon. He and I have been talking about it.
Oh, amazing. That would be an amazing interview. He has so much knowledge. It's insane. I love that he has become a brand in the sample making and also beat making community, but comes from such a different place, like the live musician route, which is there are not enough people from that space in the community. I feel like. So very interesting perspective. So I'm working on a pack with his drums. So it's always kind of me and someone. And right now I'm looking to kind of expand the whole brand and have like actually other people design whole packs. I'm still going to be involved in the design process because I just have a very, very clear vision of what the sounds need to be. I can hear a sound and be like yes or no for the library.
Yes.
It's hard for me. I couldn't describe it, but I just have this filter, which is just this big filter that I can just send stuff through it, and either it goes through or not. And I do the same thing with my sounds too. So when I pull sounds from my projects or record one shots or whatever, I just listen and I'm like this or this, like Caesar. It's very easy for me to do that decision because I built the brand. I know best what the brand should be for the sounds. And I started looking into people. People have sent me stuff, and I found a couple people who are very interesting. One is very similar to me. One is very different to what I do. And one person is kind of similar, but does stuff that I would never do because it's just the process of making those type of sounds is not interesting enough to me, so I don't spend my time doing it. But together, I think we could make some cool packs. So that's going to be the next step, is like actually have people help me design more packs to then either release more packs or so that I can do other stuff too, like more of the curating side and spend more times on my packs because we've released about 20 packs or so far, 21 packs or so. That's a lot of sounds. That's a lot of sounds, and it's a lot of sound design work, a lot of processing, a lot of editing and stuff. So I need to rediscover for myself what is my next one-shot pack gonna be, instead of just looking around and be like microphone and hit the instrument. That is not going to be exciting enough to me. I know I could sell it. I know I could make it in like a couple days, but it's just I feel like now if I don't change the process, I'm going to get tired of it, and I don't want that to happen. I want it to be something that I keep doing for a long time. So I need to switch it up just a little bit.
I love that. I love that you're constantly chasing the excitement and the joy of creating, because you already understand that that's going to be the thing that gives you longevity and keeps you going through this whole process, is not just doing something because you know you can make $1 off of it, but doing it because regardless if you made no money or if you made $1 million, you know you're enjoying yourself and it's giving you like value within yourself to create it at the end of the day. When you're discovering these new sample makers or people you're thinking of working with, what is it that exactly, I know you touched on it a little bit, what is it exactly that is something that inspires you when you're hearing it or gives you that excited feeling where you're like, wow, I feel like this could resonate with the brand?
Well, first of all, if I find someone that is just very, very high quality, that is already exciting, because I feel like getting to 90% of the quality you can get there if you put in a lot of work, but then the last 10 to 5%, I would say, for example, the authenticity that Mario achieves with his samples, that is very, very, very hard, and it's a lot of work. So if I hear something in that like range up there, then I'm already excited. I don't even care if it's gonna work on the library or not. I will consider it, because I'm like, this is so good quality. Maybe I can, change the brand a little bit. So that's one way. And the other way of getting me excited with sounds is to play me something I haven't heard before. That's very easy. If I hear something, I'm like, what is that? And I don't know what it is. I don't know how it was made, and it's exciting. Then yeah, I'm definitely intrigued by it.
No, and I've definitely experienced that when I took your sample class, which was an incredible experience and a very valuable class. And I would encourage, I'm not sure if you're still offering that, but if people ever reach out to you and want to do it, it is definitely worth it. I would recommend it. But I remember from my, I remember from my own experience in the sample pack, one fun concept thing that I did in one of our lessons was I had taken an empty box of pasta shells and I wrapped a rubber band around it, and I recorded a one shot of this like rubber band pluck, and then I made this loop, and I remember I sent it to you and you were like, what stringed instrument is that? Like I don't know what that is. I've never heard that. And then I kind of broke down, it's just this rubber band on this box, like, and you were like, wow, that's something interesting that if you made a pack of these like household type instrument sounds and like made something, that would be something interesting that could be released into the world. And just like that, something, a simple concept, but is familiar, like, it's music, but it was unexpected because you wouldn't expect some sort of sound to come from something like that. And, I just loved that was like a way to keep things exciting and do something different.
Yeah, I can very well remember that moment. I can even remember the sound. It sounded like a kind of double bass, but a lot shorter, like boom, like very short. It sounded like if you tuned down a double bass string very low, plucked it, and then pitched up the sound, made it shorter. It sounded like that. So very interesting sound. So that kind of stuff is very exciting to me.
Yeah, I love that. And, that was a great experience for me. It was cool to like, just take a concept as simple as that and just bounce it off of somebody who has a great ear for sound and for great music. And then to get that confirmation and feedback from somebody who I respect their opinion and then be like, this is great. This is a great idea. Like that's something that is very valuable. I feel like in the sample maker community in general is when you can create a sound. And not even just from an instrument like that, but even creating samples where you show it to somebody and they're like, what is that? This excites me. I've never heard something like this. That's when I feel like you're really on the right path. Yeah. Now, when you got Minta Foundry off the ground, if you were to erase everything and start over and go back to day one, how would you go about doing things for somebody if they were trying to get something like that started and off the ground? Would you do free packs and samples until you get placements and opportunities? Or would you recommend them creating just a great product and just selling it?
I think, so let me think, because now is very different from 2 years ago. So let's pretend we're starting it now because that's more value.
Realistic.
Yeah, it's more realistic. Doesn't make any sense to tell you how I would do it 2 years ago. So how I would do it now is create a small pack, not too big. Make smaller packs. But every sound needs to be like top notch. Like the sounds need to be very practical. They need to be usable in production. And it can be weird. It doesn't have to be clap sounds or rim sounds or whatever. It can be something weird, but it needs to be something that you tested it out in your own production. You need to be like, oh, this actually works. This can help someone else achieve their vision of sound. Because basically I design sounds that inspire other people and help them achieve their sonic vision, people without like instruments.
Yes.
So they kind of need me to get their vision realized, So smaller packs, good artwork, and I think the artwork there is still. I think there needs to be a new creative wave, like a new creative path. I feel like when I look at the artworks, I'm very often already kind of bored when I see it. I'm like, oh, well, if the sounds sound like the artwork looks, Why would I even open this pack? Because I've seen it so many times. You see what I'm saying?
Yes,
it's like,
definitely.
try to be different with the artwork already, like as the first step, because then people might be a bit more excited to open the pack and listen to what it is. And then releasing sounds for free is a great way of just getting downloads, and maybe then later on start selling packs. But you don't have to do it. You can also be like, you know what, I don't care if I don't sell any copies of my pack. This has value, so I want people to either not have it or spend money on it. That's fine. I think that's totally fine. You don't have to give stuff away for free. But you need to be prepared for 0 downloads. That's what happened when I dropped my first pack. It wasn't a Minter Foundry pack because I dropped packs before I created the Minter Foundry brand. But as El Hug, my first pack got like 0 downloads. Like nobody paid for it. That's how you start, 0 downloads, and then over time, people will then know about your sound and come to your store for your sounds. I would definitely try to recommend people build their own website or their own store. It can be a Gumroad, can be a Sellfy, doesn't matter. But instead of reaching out to other distributors right away, build your own shit first, and then people will reach out to you.
Very true. That's what I had to do. I remember, like, I took Mario Luciano's sample class. I took your sample class. I tried to spend a lot of time, like, really learning from people who had already released great packs that I respected, and kind of learning a little bit of the concept of building your brand and setting it up. And then I had set up my Shopify store and, you know, did the whole YouTube preview. I remember I put in the chapters with the name and BPM of the sample and those kind of things, which I remember even when I started that was something that, like, when I did that, Drum Broker wasn't doing that yet at the time. They weren't putting in the names of the samples and those kind of things, which I was like, wow, I really wish they would do that. That way, if I was ever to come back to the video, I could just click right to it and know. And then shortly after I did that, it started happening, and I was like, cool, like everybody's on this similar energy. Like we all recognize, okay, there's value in knowing the name of the sample, like, and knowing the BPM and the key and those kind of things. And definitely, like, building my first sample pack and doing and releasing that, it was something where it got downloads, but it wasn't necessarily overwhelming numbers, but it was enough to keep me excited. I was like, wow, like somebody likes my sound. They like what I'm doing. Keep going. And it's been almost a year since I put out my last pack, but this whole time I've been learning and growing and trying different things. And I really want to make sure the next thing I put out is higher quality than the last thing I released. And whether that means stripping back things and keeping them simple, or just really feeling like I've been graduating to a new level of my sample making, that I just want to make sure I'm pushing myself forward. And I could say for anybody, like, I would agree with you. You're not going to have overwhelming numbers at first, but if you just stick to building your brand as a whole, that's going to carry you far. I remember I was talking with the 44th Floor, and we were talking about, you know, Kenny Beats is the perfect example of somebody who's built a brand. You know, I've seen Kenny Beats streams, I've heard him speak. I don't know any Kenny Beats songs that he's produced, but he's built his brand so well that I recognize who he is and understand that he's a good producer. You know what I mean? And that just shows you, like, the more you build your brand, the farther you can go.
Yeah, definitely. You said everything there's to say about this subject, I feel like.
Are you currently living off of your music? And if so, how did you make that transition sort of happen?
Yes, I am living off my music. And I've been doing that even before I started to make samples, actually. I did every job that is related in some way to music at one point. I've been an engineer, sound designer, live musician, composer for theater, movie, whatever. I did it at some point, and it was very chaotic. I was doing small little projects here and there. So I believe I've been living off music for a couple of years now, but it was very frustrating because I didn't really love the the music I was doing at that point. And then I went to the OZ and Foreign Tech workshop that was over 3 years ago in Zurich. And I realized, well, sample making is a thing. Like making melodies is something that it's kind of, it's a market basically. So I was like, oh, let me just focus on that for a while. And then I kind of transitioned from doing all these random projects to doing just one thing. And the way I did it, and this was how I would recommend people do it. Also, if you have like a day job, I know not everybody can do that with their day job, but if you can transition, that's always better than just cut from 100% day job to 100% working off music. If you can, if there is a way to transition, try to transition, because that's just a very natural way of doing things. It lets you take breaks. It lets you reassess. It lets you just understand the change that is happening better than if you just cut from 0 to 100. You know.
I would agree. I know for me, when pre-COVID, I had been working a serving job, serving in a restaurant 5 days a week, and I only had 2 days off. And on those 2 days off, like even on my days I was working, I was creating music. And that was when I started trying to learn how to make samples. And it was something where I was producing and engineering and mixing and mastering and working with artists who were nearby me and I was familiar with. And I remember I would wake up, because I'd be working late at night kind of thing. I'd wake up at like 11 a.m., get ready, like just relax in the morning, get ready for work around 1 p.m., go to work at 3, work 3 to 10 p.m., 10:30, pick up the artist I was going to be working with and recording with, and then from like 10 p.m. till 6 or 7 a.m. be recording and working on music till the sun came up.
Yeah.
And then get some sleep and then do it all again. And then on my 2 days off, it would be like, okay, I have days off, but on those days, now there's just full days of committing to music. And I remember transitioning when COVID hit to having full time off. And I had never had that much time off yet. And it almost made things not more difficult, but having such a big transition going from working like that to like having just unlimited free time, it almost made me lazier in a way. Like I feel like looking back now, I should have applied myself and done a lot more in that time period than I did. And now a couple months ago, I recently picked up a part-time job serving again. Nowhere near working as much. I only work like 3 days a week, but now I'm in this process of really understanding the value of my time and knowing like, okay, even when I'm working or on my days off now, like I'm putting my energy into making a sample every day. I'm putting my energy into saving money. So my next goal right now is I'm saving enough money to take another year off of work. And in that year off, I'm like, as I'm building up to this year off, I'm like, okay, I'm like hitting the musical gym every day, lifting the musical weights of making a sample every day, studying more, getting better, buying packs, listening to packs, like collaborating with other sample makers, speaking with them, and just trying to set myself up so for when this transition happens, like, and I'm off on that day one of that year again, I'm like hitting the ground running and I'm ready to go. And I think that transition and knowing the value of your time is very important.
Yeah, I agree.
So what are your daily habits sort of like? You know, what are your hours typically? When do you wake up? How does the day flow? When do you go to sleep? Those sort of things.
It's super random these days. Having a kid and working from home is just becomes this kind of just chaos of I don't know. It's very hard for me to tell you like what hour I wake up, because every day is different, and it's very different now from in February, because if a kid decides to wake up at 5, it's going to be 5. If a kid decides to wake up at like 9:30, it's going to be 9:30, because you're so tired that you're just going to sleep in, because I don't use the alarm clocks anymore, because except if I have an interview at like 8 a.m. on a Saturday, but usually I don't have an alarm clock on any time. So it's very random. I try to, let's say the days where I'm off being a dad, I try to work out in the morning, then go to the studio, get some things done, like things I have to just do. For example, answer emails, maybe send out a pack, or maybe remix something or whatever. Just like a task that I know is going to be done in like half an hour or 10 minutes or 2 hours, so I can get shit done in the morning, so I feel less pressured in the afternoon to come up with stuff, because even if I don't come up with anything creatively, I still will have already done the working out and those 2 to 3 little tasks. So I feel a lot less pressure to get stuff done. So I try to do that. Then in the evening, it's usually dinner, put kid to bed, and then work a bit more. I like to work in the evenings now. That wasn't always the case. I used to like to wake up at 5 and work very early, but now it has changed. I like to work in the evening. So I will do like 2 to 3 more hours of either researching, watching YouTube videos, practicing, or actually producing, composing music in the evening.
I love that. How much of your time would you say is dedicated to practicing instruments versus solely creating samples?
Right now it's not that much. It's maybe like, I would say maybe 10% or so, but I'm trying to get it back up to about 50%, because I feel like if I could get like 3 hours of practicing in every day, that would make me level up a lot and will also help me save time. Because basically, if I have an idea on an instrument, let's say on the guitar or so, I will not stop recording and trying until I reach the thing that I want to achieve. So the better I am on the instrument, the faster I'm going to get there, basically. So let's say I want to do like a very fast melody on the guitar. If I had practiced the last 2 months my guitar, I would maybe be able to do it in like 10 minutes. But since I didn't, it will take me 2 hours. So practicing, I also see that as kind of investing in your future and saving time in the future. So I'm trying to get the practicing up again. I picked up the piano a bit more recently. I felt like I didn't have to practice the piano because I've been practicing it for my whole life. Yep. But I just felt very frustrated with the chord progressions that I came up with. So started practicing again, and now I love it again. So it's basically just, you need to spend time with your instruments, or you're gonna get tired of them. It's like, it's as cliche as it sounds. It's like a relationship. If you don't spend time together, it's not a relationship. It's not gonna
well
work.
said. So well said. Yeah, I agree with that. I know for me, music, it's been something I've always loved since I was a kid. And then when you start really like working on it and trying to take it seriously like a job, you're fighting this duality sometimes of like work and pleasure, because it's something that you used to just do. Like for me, it was something that I would just come home and I would just practice for hours because I just loved playing a guitar. It was this new instrument to me that I would just be so excited to learn a new song, to just practice scales, like anything like that. Yeah. And then now the more I'm doing it, it's like, some days it feels a little intimidating because you're like, okay, like I have to record something today. If you're holding yourself to that standard of like, I need to do a sample a day, you're like, all right, I have to come up with something, and then you can get into your head of like, well, I don't want to do X chord progression or whatever because it's been done, or, just these roadblocks that come into your mind that are only there because you're putting them there. And so one thing I've been doing more and more is just letting go. And just pick up the guitar, play something, and in the first couple minutes of just coming up with something, just record it, just lay it down, and then just start adding layers and see where it takes you. A good lesson I learned from Timmy Holiday when I interviewed him was he just talks about, in 10 minutes, just record as many layers as you can. Don't worry about processing, just pick up the guitar or piano or whatever, play something, and just lay it down. Start singing some vocals over it, lay it down, bass, lay it down, and then spend maybe the next 20 minutes processing it a little bit. And then in the end of those 30 minutes, whatever you come up with, just commit to that. And just even doing that as like an exercise, just to get the the nerves out of the way and just be like, okay, I can create something great. I don't have to spend 8 hours on one sample just to deem it great, or spend those 8 hours and then realize after the end of those 8 hours, I maybe didn't need to spend as much time on this, and it's not as great as I had hoped, which can lead you to even more psychological problems. But just trying to keep things fun, keep things light, not take things too seriously is something I've been trying to discover and apply more. And I feel like that's something that a lot of people go through as well, you know? But that's where practicing the instrument comes into play and being able to make decisions quickly. You taught me a good lesson when we had our class. Another good thing you taught me was, I remember talking to you about guitars, and this is when you were just kind of picking up guitar, like you were really starting to commit to it. And such a valuable piece of advice you taught me was you told me at that time you like kind of treated the top 3 strings on the guitar as one instrument and treated the bottom 3 strings as a separate instrument. And I remember applying that concept, and it like opened up a new way of thinking of the guitar, and it was just such a great approach, and I loved that concept and idea.
Yeah, sometimes just the way you think about something just really helps you just get things done, you know. For me, I try to do that on every instrument, actually. I don't try to be a good instrumentalist in the sense of I don't want to be hired as a live musician on flute, like, because that would just mean I would need to practice so much more. But I try to be good enough to be able to record my own music and maybe bring my flute to a studio and be good enough so that people are, you know, be like, oh shit, yeah, record some notes here, you know. Yes. And that's fine. And I have to do enough work to get to that point. And then everything on top is just bonus. I can still do that if I want to. But since I try to be a multi-instrumentalist, I need to get at least to that point. And then from there, it's just bonus. And it's a lot of work to get there on multiple instruments, but it's doable. It's just you have to put in the hours, and then it's doable.
Yeah, there's definitely no shortcuts when you're learning how to play an instrument, you know? Like, there's concepts you can learn, but there's nothing like just putting in the hard day's work and getting your hands dirty.
Yeah.
How's learning the cello going? I know that's like a very complex instrument.
Like very bad. Yeah, no, very bad. It was very good in the beginning. It's always the same thing. At the beginning, it's very easy. It's very exciting, blah blah. And then you realize, man, this is going to be so much work, and that just held me back from picking it up more. So I need to snap out of it and pick it up again. But I've kind of stopped learning it for a while because it's just like a big mountain of work that just felt frustrating. And I noticed from other instruments, but it's just when I picked it up, I was making music that could have benefited a lot from solo cello line. And the music I'm making right now doesn't need that really, so it's less urgent also, which is fine, you know. I don't have to do it just because I said I'm gonna do it, you know. I start stuff and stop doing it all the time. That's just part of the process. But I feel like I still see myself being 60 years old knowing how to play the cello. So I don't want to start at 59 because that would be too late. But I still have time, you know. But I kind of feel like it's going to be... It's an instrument that always fascinated me. And there are other instruments that I want to pick up. But I don't necessarily see myself playing the trumpet when I'm 60. I don't care about that image of myself too much.
Yes.
But I kind of care about the image of me playing the cello at 60. So I don't know. It's going to be something that I will figure it out one day.
Yeah, it'll be on the list of the lifetime achievements, learning the cello at some point.
Just, you know, sitting on a veranda, like a I don't know if you call it veranda, like a
terrace.
Porch. Yeah, terrace. Just sitting there playing the cello at 60 years old.
I could definitely see it, you know, with Lou and the grandkids and, you know, just enjoying yourself.
He's going to be 30 years old, yeah.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah.
So how would you say, you know, your relationship with music has changed now versus when you were a kid?
Well, it's a business now. It's and I see it that way too. motivation used to only come from the joy of music, like just the joy of creating something. Maybe not even the joy of music, but just the joy of creating something. I could see myself doing something completely different as long as it involves creation in some form. I happen to be in music now. I'm not going to leave, but now inspiration and motivation can come from other things too. Not only the joy of creating. It can sometimes I'm motivated by just the feedback from someone, just someone being like, "Oh, this is amazing," and I'm like, "Oh shit, you like that? Well, let me make some more." You know, that can lead me to create more. Sometimes it's money. Sometimes it's just a money win. You know, I get maybe a place and I'm like, oh shit, did I really make that amount of money on this song? Let me make some more. You know, it can be that too. So I see it more as a business now, but at the same time, I am unable to do this if I don't enjoy it. Like I get frustrated so fast if I don't enjoy it. Like unfortunately it doesn't happen very often, but let's just pretend I am in a session and I don't like the music that is being made. My mind is just, how do I get out of this? I want to leave. I just don't want to do this because I'm so used to just being able to decide on my own what kind of music I want to create. So if I don't enjoy it, I don't want to do it. So
I agree.
Yeah, it's a business. It's my life now. Music is my life. It wasn't my life when I was a kid. It was just part of the things that I liked. But now music is it's what I do every day. So that's how I think about it.
I love that. So well said. How did you first kind of get linked up with Mario Luciano and doing your first releases on Polyphonic before Minta was a reality?
So when I found out about sample making and that way of creating music, producing music, through Instagram, the first people that I found who were doing that already were Eli, Stupid Lou, and Mario Luciano. That were the first three I found by total coincidence. I don't know how, but just these were the first three accounts that I saw. Oh, they're doing that, something that I want to do. So I started following them and a couple other people. And then I saw Mario put out these classes. That was 3 years ago. He was already doing the class. He was like, he's always ahead of everybody else.
Yeah, he's always doing something new and progressive.
Yeah.
He's great at doing that.
Yeah. So I booked the class with him, sent him samples for feedback in the first class. And at that time, I was doing everything in the box, just with VSTs and stuff. And he listened to the composition, and he was like, man, the compositions are incredible. Just imagine how this would sound if it was real instruments. And I was like, man, I can do real instruments. I just have to pick them up because my dad has a guitar. I know how to play the piano. I'm sure I could get some notes from a bass if I try. You know, I was just like, oh, this I didn't even think about that. And so we spent the next few classes. He showed me his process, the plugins he used. He told me about like how he worked with other musicians, how he had them come in and record stuff for him. And then he recommended that I reach out to Illmind because Mario listened to my samples and he was like, Illmind will absolutely love those samples. So I reached out to Illmind through DM, and Mario was kind enough to kind of let Illmind know that I would reach out to him. So that helped a lot. And yeah, that also got me my placements with Illmind 2.5 years later. It took a long time for the placements to come out, but Illmind was the first big producer to give me a shot, and I'm forever grateful because that was such an exciting time. Just seeing him play beats with my samples on his Instagram live and then on Twitch, on YouTube. I remember just waking up in the middle of the night, checking my phone, like just to see if he was live, just to hear my samples being used. That was so exciting. That helped me really get excited about this way of making music.
Yeah, I mean that feeling of a big producer using the music, you spent time creating in your studio in Zurich, in this room by either by yourself or with Faison, and then being able to hear it on a beat being flipped into something like we were touching on earlier, something useful that ends up becoming a great song, whether that's with Russ or that's with Guapdad 4000, it becomes like this thing that you're like, wow, it came from concept in my head to played on the instrument and recorded here in Switzerland to produced in New York to now heard by the world. And it's like gotta be an incredible feeling to experience that multiple times over.
Yeah, it is. And with Polyphonic Music Library, so when I took the class, Polyphonic Music Library didn't exist yet. That was, I think, a half year later or so. Mario had this idea to create this label, and then he reached out to me. Obviously, he knows about so many people's samples because he has taught so many people, So he knows a lot of the stuff that we have never heard of. So he had a vision of my music on there, and then he reached out to see if I wanted to do a pack. So I have 3 packs out. I'm working on volume 4 right now. And I don't know when it's going to be done, but it's always with these library packs, it always takes me a lot more time to finish them and to make them than the samples I just send out exclusively to bigger producers, because I feel like it has to be some kind of album, some kind of whole body of work. So it takes me a lot of time to figure out what that should sound like.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like the world of sample making is such a wild place to see on the regular. I'm just noticing more and more there's this duality. There's simple samples that get placed, and then it seems like your music library samples are these, like, it's almost like your album. You're making these compositions and these lush arrangements that really show off either your production skills, your arrangement skills, like these different sides of you that you can kind of go the extra mile on that maybe aren't necessarily always placement worthy, not worthy, but placementable, if that makes sense. I know that's not really a word, but well, they're
not drag and drop ready, let's say.
Yes, there you go.
It's just you need to flip them to make them
you need to
placeable.
chop them and find the parts that you like, and like taking it's like the old adage of when you hear 0 to 100 by Drake, the whole Frank Dukes composition is this long 2-3 minute composition, and they took the first 2 seconds, and that's what made it the placementable sample,
Yeah.
But it's wild to see all the growth, and I'm pretty sure that's how I first heard about you. Was I had taken Mario's class, and then shortly after that, Polyphonic became a thing, and you were like one of the first releases on there. And hearing Al Hug Volume 1, I was like, who's Al? And then I reached out to you, and then you were willing to teach a class, and I'm so grateful for that. And it's
you were the first person to take my class. The class didn't exist before you. Yeah.
That's crazy. You know what I mean?
You made me create the class that I'm still teaching now.
It's so wild how that works. I mean, I'm not somebody that's always very destiny oriented, but there's things that happen and people I talk to that it's wild to see how things play out in your life, and certain people who cross your path. Yeah, it's a wild world we live in.
It is.
How did you know when you were ready to release your first sample pack? Was it more of like a confirmation from Mario, or was it something you kind of knew within yourself that you were ready to release this to the world?
Never really thought about that, actually. I guess when I get an opportunity, I ask myself, do I want to do this or not? And that's how I decide. I don't think about if I'm ready or not. It's if I like the music, and well, actually, I do one thing. I very often before I release something, I have this doubt if it's good enough. Like actually every time, like every single Instagram video there is on my channel, on my Instagram page, before uploading it, I was like, nah, damn, I don't think this one is really that good. Maybe I should just delete it. Like every time, I know, it just comes to my mind. I'm like, should I really release this? And then I started to do a thing where I'm like, this is good enough. I just tell myself, good enough is also good, you know? And I just put it out. And it's always better than you think it is. So that's how I do it now. It's just I try to make the best music I can in the production process, then doubt myself, then tell myself it's good enough and just put it out. Let other people decide if it's good or not.
So well said. Like I agree with that. Even recently there was a sample I made where I had tried this new concept. I came up with this, like, I was like, there's this plugin I know that not many people are using, which is rare in the music world when you like find a plugin that you're like, and it's not even necessarily the plugin itself, but it's like the effect of the plugin. I was like, most people like aren't doing this effect, and I don't even care. I'll even share it. There's the company called Kilohertz, and there's a plugin in there called Transgate, and it's this. You know, most people, they'll use like sound toys like Tremolator, and that gives, you know, the tremolo, the volume pumping effect, or they'll use Shaper Box. Well, what I like about Transgate is if you've ever heard like My Love by Justin Timberlake, it's normally like an effect that's on a synth. It makes the synth kind of pulse at a rhythm like So using that effect on guitars, I was like, I don't hear anybody using like a Transgate on a guitar. And so I used this Transgate on the guitar, and it gave it this like unique rhythm that you could like program, where it's like pulsing at a different rhythm, not just 16th notes, not just 8th notes, you know, not just like a side chain effect. It was like giving it an actual rhythm. And I remember I put that on this guitar and then recorded some vocals and just did like some really simple stuff. I don't think the sample was even more than like 4 layers. And I just posted it on my story, and so many people were like, send me this, like I want this sample, like, and I was like, it's so crazy how just having, you know, you approach something with like a concept in your mind of, I'm going to use this plugin that I know not a lot of people are using, and then you take a risk and you're unsure of it, and you just say, this is good enough, and then it could end up being something that everybody wants to use or hear. You know, it's wild.
I try to let other people judge my stuff, you know. I'm responsible of the creation process. I do my best there. I overthink. I judge. I'm like, this is not good enough. Need to record this better. This piano doesn't sound right. Need to change the mic. That's my job. But then deciding if it's like where it's gonna end up, that's somebody else's job. Like,
so well said.
I just put it out there, and people do their thing with it.
Yeah, it's like, you know, just create it and then let it go and let others decide where it needs to end up in the end.
Yeah.
Very, very valuable information. How did you first connect with some of the producers and artists you're currently working with?
So for example, let's see. Well, a lot of the placements I got is through another producer. I'm the sample maker. I send the samples. They make the beat. They place the beat. That's like most of my placements that I have. Or that's how it happened. But now I try to get more artist connections too, and usually it happens after a placement, especially if you have an interesting Instagram page like myself, where there's a lot of content on there. You can watch my videos, you can see the packs I drop. There's a lot of stuff to look at. So let's say I have a placement with an artist, I tag them in the release, I post in my story, whatever, and it's a day where they would also repost their stories because they want to, you know, promote their music. That's when they are on the app too. So they happen to stumble upon my profile, and they're like, "Oh shit, you produced that song, and also your stuff is very interesting." So it happens to me quite often that I then get the follow from them.
I love that.
And then that's the good way. Then you can reach out to them and be like, oh, and you have to be mindful that somebody created that connection. So don't just go around it. I'm like, oh, I don't need this person anymore. You know, just be aware that somebody helped you create that connection. So either talk to them or be like, or still work through them. You know, even though I got the Chance connect, I'm working through Dex Level because he, like, we work together, right? He is Chance's producer, so I work through Dex Level. So I'm very aware of, like, you know, the relationships I have and try to be respectful of people's privacy and so on. But it's still good to get like connections, direct connections to artists.
So well said. And, you know, there's two valuable takeaways I took from that right there. One is making sure you have like content on your page that when somebody lands on your page by chance, however they end up there, there's value there. They can see it's not just a page of the little music player on your iPhone with the sample. It's just a page of that with nothing interesting to look at. It's there's videos, like I love that you've been doing the weekly uploads of you like doing a sample and it's you playing each instrument and it has this unique look and it's edited and put together very well. And that's like something engaging and interesting. It's creating almost shareable content. You're creating content that makes me excited to share it, whether that's great cover artwork that's interesting to look at, that, you know, reflects the sound of the pack, or you're creating, you know, your weekly sample that's something I can share, and it gives the person sharing your content value as well. It's like, look at this taste I have. There's this great sample maker he's creating great music, but it makes me feel like I have great taste in music by sharing it, you know? So I love that. And then the other takeaway I have is, you know, reaching out and maintaining those relationships with producers. Just because you work with this producer and then now you have the direct connection to the artist, don't forget, like you said, the way you got there.
Yeah,
definitely.
Yeah, that's very important. Also, what was I going to say? Yes. So your Instagram page is kind of your website if we were in 2010, you know.
Yes.
You kind of need it. You need it, and it's very. It better look good. It better have some interesting stuff on there, because when people get on your site, it's important that they have something to look at, you know. And I haven't reached out to any producers in probably like 1.5 years. It turned like they start to reach out to me, and that's probably the biggest win from the last 2 years, is just not having to reach out to people anymore. That's just incredible, because that's also what people are gonna try to sell you if they want to manage you. For example, you know, they come like, I want to manage you. I can put you in touch with that and this person, and you're like, well, it's very kind, but I kind of had that person already reach out to me, you know, and that's like the biggest win. Yes, and I know it's not just luck. I know it's because I put so much time and work into my Instagram page.
Agreed.
And I put a lot, like the weekly videos that, to be honest, are not very weekly at this point. I'm still going to do the 52 videos, but I'm not going to be able to do them in 1 year. There's just too much stuff to do. But I will do the 52 videos, but I'm probably going to end in like March 2023 or something. But it's not a problem. It doesn't matter. So I put a lot of hours into making them. So having people reach out to me now because of that is a good turnaround, you know.
I love that. And I'm so proud of you as like a former student who's like watched your whole journey, like watching you go from, you know, there's a story you shared with me a long time ago that, you know, I don't know how many people know this. I don't know if you've said this in your other interviews, but the story of you working with Oz, OZ, you know, I loved the story of, you know, you told me you sent him sample packs, emailed him, nothing, didn't hear anything for a few months, but just kept sending the packs. And then one day he downloaded all of them.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and that's such a great story. And it just shows you like, just keep creating quality, keep creating great music, and you never know when that break is going to happen and it'll work for you.
Yes. Yeah, definitely. Just keep sending this stuff, and it will happen. Something will happen in the future.
Definitely. Another pro tip I remember you sharing with me, backtracking a little bit of working with Illmind, was you knew what time, you know, this is a pro tip for anybody. If you know what time this person is going to go on stream, if they have a certain time every day, send them those samples about 15 minutes or 30 minutes before you know they're going to go on stream. That way they hear these samples, they're like, oh, this is fresh content. I can use this right now. I'm inspired in this moment, and it can lead to a great future placement with Russ or somebody big, you know, you never know.
Yeah. I watch people how they move without like being a stalker. Like definitely
Yes.
don't be a stalker. Be very quiet, but it's okay to watch people and see how they move, and then have kind of strategies to when to send stuff to certain people.
Yeah. No, that's such a valuable piece of information. I still think of that to this day. I'm like, that's the way to do it. If you can know, the optimum time to send something, that's the time to send it.
Yeah.
What is some helpful advice you'd give to sample makers or producers trying to connect with other artists or other producers?
Well, first of all, make music that is inspiring to them, and don't tailor your music to be inspiring to them. Just hope that it is. You need to make your music, not theirs. And if it doesn't click, it doesn't click. If somebody's on a different wave, then they're on a different wave. That's fine. There's going to be an artist for you. There's going to be a producer for you. I've worked with producers for multiple months, and then they just decided to go another route. That's fine. I just keep doing my stuff. I find new people to work with, and I just hope that people like my stuff. I don't really make it for them.
Yes, you just create your sound, which is like a very recognizable Al Hug sound, and then you let the music find its place.
Yes, exactly. And then, in terms of reaching out, I think it has become very difficult to reach out through DMs because everybody tries to stay off the app as much as possible, because it's not, nobody gets healthier from being on the app. It might not be as destructive for one person than for the other, but I think being on Instagram or Twitter needs to be a kind of a conscious decision. I'm here to work / have fun, be informed, learn stuff, but not like well, anyways, what I was going to say is people try to stay off the app more, so they're going to check their DMs less, basically.
Yes.
So it has become more difficult to reach out to people through DMs. What you can do is reach out to the people that stream, for example, because they look at the chat, for example, or they have a Discord, for example. So that's good people to reach out to. And then through other producers, just get a placement through another producer, and then hope that you can create the connection.
Yes. Is there like a way is there like a language or a dialogue, that you feel like is the best way to go about it? Because obviously the cold DM of, hey bro, let's work, or hey bro, can I send you samples? That's not always the way to go about things. It doesn't work.
Well, really shouldn't be the way that anybody goes about it, to be honest. Except if you're very honestly, if somebody's like very famous, has like a lot of records, and wants my sample, and they send me a let's work, I don't mind. That's fine. If I want to work with them, I don't care how they reach out to me.
Yes.
I'm cool with that. But if you don't have all those records, if you don't have all this leverage, then first of all, make it short, like as short as possible, but not the let's work, not that short. But make it very short. Nobody gonna be real, and nobody cares how old you are. Nobody cares where you live. Well, actually, where you live can be a valuable information, just an interesting information. But nobody cares how old you are. Nobody cares how long you've been making music. Nobody cares what job you work, whatever. Just get to the point. Tell them you love their work in a very short sentence. And then if you have something to offer, like I'm a classically trained harp player, for example, then why not mention that? Or if you have, for example, a studio that you manage in Nashville, and you're like, if you ever happen to be around here, you can come to my studio. If you have something like that, then yes, you can use that. You can mention that. But in the end, it's the music. The music is going to decide if you're going to work or not.
Very well said. It's the music and, the way you've branded yourself that's going to get you the right connection at the end of the day.
Yeah.
I love that you create useful toolkits for sample makers and producers that allow them to tap into this authentic, vintage sounds and tones. What drew you to those sounds and the idea to create toolkits like the Mellotron expansion packs and your percussion loop packs?
Well, almost all my packs I made them for myself first. So, for example, the percussion packs, the way it happened was I was making samples, and I like to start a sample with some rhythmic information in the beginning. Could be a drum loop, drum break, or a percussion loop, because I don't like to use the click when I start. I want tempo, but I don't want the click. So I started to begin all my samples with just recording percussions before recording anything else. So then after like the 10th time of doing it, I was like, well, if I could just reuse that percussion, pitch it down, slice it, whatever. So I started to export all the percussion loops that I made in the earlier projects, put them in a pack, looked at it and was like, well, if I find this practical and useful, maybe someone else will find that useful too. So I put it in a pack, put it up there, and people started buying it. That's basically how it happens every time. I just the one shot's the same. I created the one shots for myself so that when I'm not at my studio, I can still use the sounds from my studio, put them in a pack, put them on a website. People started buying them. I always think of what do I need, and now I'm with Minter Foundry, like we talked in the beginning. I'm ready to kind of transition away from what do I need and think more also about what do other people need. So I'm willing now, and I'm able now to maintain a good sonic brand, but also kind of take one more step and be like, okay, what do other people need?
Yes, so well said. Yeah, I love that. It's almost like you've accomplished and done enough for yourself and your own sound that you feel satisfied, that you're like, now I can spread my roots a little farther and see what does the world need? What are they looking for that still aligns with my values and what I'm creating on a day-to-day basis?
Yes.
I love that. When you're making samples and these things now, do you find yourself exporting like certain one-shots or loops and things as you're going along? Or is that something that normally you revisit the samples later on and export and kind of build a pack out of?
Second, I revisit. Usually when I make a sample and I finish it, I've spent so much time on it that I just want to export, close the project, and do something else.
Yes.
And not have to go through it again. And also, I think it's good to look back on something. It's inspiring to look at your older projects. So very often when I make for example, the Fragments pack, when I made that one, which is kind of melody starters and one-shots and just like a bunch of different things and percussion loops and shit. When I made that, very often I would go into an old project, then take one stem, think like, oh, I'm going to export this for the Fragments pack, then started to build on that, make a whole sample, and not have anything for the Fragments pack, and it turned up with something that I then sent out to another producer, because it was just so inspiring to look at my older projects and build new things from it. And I've been thinking about this a lot. Actually, what I'm maybe going to do, if I find the time to do it, is go into every project of mine and export stems for it, but not like stems for this whole sample, but just every track as a stem, so that you could use any track as a new starting point, basically. So let's say you have a composition which starts just with guitar, and then there's percussions about it, just stuff comes in. So if you exported stems, your percussion stem would be silent at the beginning, right? Because it only starts in like the second section. Mm-hmm. So I wouldn't export it like that, but actually export everything to start in the very beginning. Yes,
Okay,
exactly.
that's smart.
So let's just say I'm not very inspired, but I have to create some samples because I haven't done it in a while, and I'm like, damn, I should really get some music in. I can just go in my LHOG starters, stems, whatever's folder, and from any project that I ever created, I can use any stem. I could use a piano stem, a double bass stem, a percussion stem, synth stem, whatever it is. Just listen to stuff and wait for something that is inspiring and then build a new sample of that. Because I'm big on recycling older ideas. I go back all the time, use an old sample and then flip it, slice it into a new one and then send that one out. So another way of doing it would be to actually use stems from older projects as new starting points.
That's genius. I love that concept, and I love the not being afraid to use an old idea. You know, not every sample always has to be starting from scratch from a blank slate. And like, you know, it was the same way you discovered when you were making your percussion loops. It was like once you had made a few of them, you're like, okay, I can recycle these and use these loops. Other people can use them too. And I love the idea of going back and using maybe an old bass line and then, like you said, slicing it, changing the tempo, pitching it up, and creating a whole new, you know, you're adding new piano over it now, or maybe you're writing a new guitar loop over it, or just whatever inspires you in the moment.
Yeah.
Just reusing and re-adding value to old material. It's recycling at its finest.
Yeah, I mean, if I have a sample that has a very simple chord progression, like, I don't know, G minor, C minor, G minor, C minor, whatever, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I just take that bass line, and in that sample, it was very basic, just triad chords. But let's say I use this bass line and I start using like a G minor 7 instead of a G minor. Like the whole vibe is different, right?
It's true.
Instead of using a piano, I'm using a Wurli, for example. Then that is already a different story, right? And then on the C, I can make it minor 11, for example, and then I'm like, well, this is totally different. Then on the G, I can use a F and make it a G sus chord, for example.
Yes,
like, you know, recycling sounds it's not only recycling sounds, it's also recycling bass lines, creating like reharmonizing, for example. Same thing with melodies. I've actually been doing this sometimes. Let's say you have a sample and you have a chord progression, and then you create a top line melody to it. So let's say you have a chord progression, you play a flute line on it. Okay. Second section, you remove the chords, you keep the melody, and you reharmonize that melody. You add different chords to that melody. And then sometimes you delete the first idea because it was just a means of getting there. So you have simple chords, melody, new chords, and then you delete the old chords.
Get rid of the original chords. Yeah. I love that.
Reharmonization, yeah.
It's so powerful, like reharmonization, I feel like, because, you know, maybe originally when you're playing it, you're like, okay, the lead melody is really accenting the thirds and the sevenths of the chords as I'm moving. But now you're like, well, I want to use a 6 chord, or I want to use a sharp, I want to turn into a sharp 11. I want to make the color tones of this now something new that it definitely wasn't when it started out.
Yeah.
And it totally opens up your mind to this like new approach to a different idea.
Yeah.
I love that. Do you feel like nowadays on any given day you could create a sample that you would love regardless of what's hot or not in the sample making world? Or do you feel it's more of a moving target, as they would say?
Well, I'm very bad at catering to other people's ideas. I'm very bad at catching a wave. I remember 3 years ago, everybody was asking for trumpet type melodies, and I know why. All these tracks dropped in the last year, and I could have very well just jumped on that wave, maybe had a placement, but probably not. Chances are I wouldn't even had a placement. Then, you know, you spend all your time chasing a sound and you don't even get a placement. That's actually more frustrating than just doing your thing and not have a placement, honestly.
Yeah, definitely.
I just have been very frustrated with just working for a project and not having a placement on it. So I don't do that anymore. Except if it's a good friend who's working on something, and I just want to spend time with them, not with them physically, but spend time texting, sending back and forth ideas, then I don't actually care about if it's chasing a placement or not, because then it becomes all about just being friends and just working together, and that's already a benefit. So if I don't get a placement from that, it's okay. We spend a couple hours just texting and being on the phone and be like, oh, I need this, oh, send me this, and blah, blah, blah,
Yeah, just building a genuine connection, and like the process of creating it was more fun than necessarily whatever the result's going to be.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Who are some sample makers or people you kind of speak with and work with regularly, or you're sending ideas or even just talking to on a regular basis that help keep you motivated and inspired?
Well, I've been talking to Elias a lot these days. He came to my studio for 2 studio sessions. That was the first time we met. We worked before a little bit, but never, not very constant, not very often. So now that we met, it's a lot easier to just send ideas randomly and just be like, yo, I have this, if you want to take a shot, and not, that's fine. So I've been talking to Elias a lot. Then I talk to Reski as much as I can. I find him a very inspiring human being. I wish he would post more on Instagram, because I miss all his Twitch streams because it's late at night. So
yeah.
I don't know. I find him very inspiring. So I try to look at everything he drops because it's just very inspiring to me. Because also I don't necessarily, I make, my music is very different from his. Mm-hmm. And when I listen to his stuff, it doesn't make me want to make his stuff.
No.
Not at all, actually. I'm not like, oh, I'm going to do these vocals and that and that and that. I'm not trying to copy or anything. It's just his process is very inspiring, and his way of not chasing any other sound other than his own. That's the only sound that he cares about. So it's just very fascinated by his personality, the way he is as an artist.
I love that. Yeah, you really resonate with people who are just on their own authentic path, and they're true to themselves, and it doesn't need to be, trying to be somebody else's sound. Like Frank Dukes is Frank Dukes, Al Hug is Al Hug. You don't need to be imitating somebody else's sound. Just do what resonates with you, and that's how you build a genuine connection, because people connect with the fact that you are different and that you're not just a derivative of something that inspires you.
Well, yes, when I started to make music many years ago, I didn't think there was ever going to be a career in this for me. I didn't think like I would actually make a living from it. So everything I created and the reasons why I created were very different from if you get into the industry as you start making music. I think that's a problem, actually. I think if your first how should I say this? If the first point of contact with music is the music business, then your way of making musical decisions will be too much business heavy.
Yes.
And
not enough creative freedom per se.
Yes. I think that is not a very good, that's not very good. I don't like that.
I would agree.
But that's how it is for a lot of people, and I don't want to take, it's important that those people get to experience music too. I respect that, but I think social media has made it possible for everybody to be a music producer. Like the internet made it possible for everybody, and that's not a bad thing. But if your first point of contact is the music business as you start making music, then that might be a problem.
Yeah, definitely. I'm grateful that I've taken a long time on my own personal journey, and I'm still constantly learning, and it's letting me discover the sound I really want to make, and I know that it'll eventually lead to the places that it needs to end up by not just making placement music, quote unquote, which there's nothing wrong with that, but
No, yeah.
just finding my own path and creating my own sound first and foremost before I make contact in the industry. That's going to be a more fruitful, rewarding journey in the end, I feel like.
Yeah.
I know you have like great ways of creating music. You're great on piano. You're excellent at putting together accompanying parts because of your music theory background and knowledge. Are there any tricks or production techniques you have to make your creation process quicker and easier?
Quicker and easier. Well, practice your instruments.
Yes.
If you practice your instruments, they're going to be quicker. That's that's one thing. Then quicker and easier. It's funny. I don't think about quick and easy very often. Actually, I expect things to take a lot of time. When I sit down and make a sample, I'm not trying to get to a meeting in half an hour. I know it's going to be like a couple hours. Oh no! I know it's not going to work if I try to. So, but let's maybe something that. Let's say if you have, for example, outboard gear, and it could be just a pedal or a synth or whatever, make sure that you have a setup that is as accessible as using a plugin. And plugins are very accessible. It's drag and drop, right?
Yes.
So your outboard stuff, your microphone, your synth, your pedals, it needs to be very accessible, because if it's not, you're just gonna go the quick and easy way of just using plugins instead. Too many times. So I don't know, get a patch bay, get a sound card with more inputs and outputs, for example. Make sure there's no hum on the pedal, on the synth or whatever. Get a cable that works. Make sure to maybe tune your guitar before you start the session. Like the simple stuff that makes it easy to use your physical instruments and outboard gear. Because if you don't, then you're just not going to use them. And I have to, at least once a week, I need to make sure that my whole setup works. I need to change something on the patch bay, make sure that the guitar amp is not, and there is a hum on my guitar amp and it drives me crazy. I have to bring it to the shop. So that kind of stuff, make sure things work, because if they don't, you're just going to go back to the plugins, which is fine too. But if you have the gear, you might as well use it.
I agree. I'm a little bit of both. I have, the Fender Deluxe Reverb amp. I have the Electro Voice 635A recommended by you, which is an incredible mic. I got the Cloud Lifter finally to use it so that I can capture acoustic guitars, and
nice.
I love how much fun that adds and how much it makes the sound more true to what I'm going for. Because I notice anytime I'm trying to use a plug-in version of a guitar amp or something, from plugging direct into the interface, it doesn't sound the same. It never hits quite the same as plugging in directly to an amp and miking it. But I do have it all set up to be used quickly. All I have to do is just plug in the microphone and I'm good. It's not every time I need to drag the amp out and then set up the mic and then do these things. It's just, like you said, set it up so you're ready to go, and the moment inspiration hits, you can act on it quickly.
Yeah. Yes.
What is the rhythm of your creative process sort of like? Where do you usually like to maybe start an idea, and then how do you make decisions quickly to add the layers?
I recently I brought my drums to the studio. The drums were still at my old studio, but now I brought it here, and I started to experiment with getting a good enough drum sound to use in my samples. So I like to start with drums these days, and then add the chords on top, and then add the top line melody, and then from there the bass line obviously too. And then from there, see if it needs a second section. Do I need to record different chords for the second section? Can I change the bass line maybe? And then just build it out, maybe in the end I'm going to add strings to it to make it more bigger, and layer melodies to make it more interesting. And then usually I just put everything in one group and process the whole thing, everything together. I don't even do that much processing on the individual tracks anymore. It's just a lot of just EQ and compression on the tracks, and then the whole sound design basically happens on the master. Just put everything on there. It's a lot easier for me, and the sound is more authentic actually, because if you put like 10 different RC20s in your project, you're gonna have 10 different wobbles. It's not gonna be very authentic.
Yeah, it doesn't end up sounding very harmonious with how you would want the sound to blend together.
Yeah, no, I make sure that the sound is already designed when I record it, by using different microphones or different angles. You know, it's a very different sound if I have the piano mics inside the piano or outside the piano. So if I have it outside, I'm gonna get more of a room sound, so I don't have to worry about using Ocean Way Studios on it. So, you know, I try to get the whole sound design done when I record already.
That's very smart, because I feel like for me, sometimes when I'm working on samples, like as of late, or even just, you know, a few months ago, I was finding that the things that were taking me long, it wasn't necessarily writing the music and recording it. That was relatively quickly. I could come up with a guitar progression or an idea and record it in about 5 minutes or 10 minutes. But then it was like sitting there for 50 or 45 minutes and doing the processing and scrolling through presets on Echo Boy, looking for an effect rack chain or something gonna, you know, and by the time I come up with only 4 layers, you know, you come up with the bass, the guitar, a vocal melody or something, you're almost like burned out on your time because you spent so much time processing. And I'm really trying to find ways to cut that down and just keep the creativity flowing. And so I like the idea of having the sound design portion kind of done before you start recording. That's way smart.
And also, like, processing individual tracks, why do we do that even? Because are you going to listen to the individual tracks like on solo? No, probably not. I mean, there might be a section where it's solo, but then you can always like do the sound design later on. But it's just there doesn't need to be delay, reverb, compression, EQ, tape distortion, tape wobble, and some, I don't know, crazy portal effect on every track.
Yes.
Like, the individual track doesn't have to sound interesting. It really doesn't. Like, if you listen to stems from, I don't know, old Michael Jackson records or Motown or whatever, the individual stems are not processed. There are sounds on there that are super dry. Their only role is to maybe layer another melody, for example. Their role is not to sound interesting. So don't try to make every single track interesting. It's your composition is just going to be, or your sound design is just going to be. The way I see it is like a bucket you fill with water, and the processing is the water. So if you put too much processing in there, it's just going to overflow, and you're going to be like, oh shit, I'm not even done with my composition, and it's already too much.
Yes.
So I try to do as little as possible. But still, there is some things you need to do. Make it interesting. It needs to sound interesting, but not overwhelmingly interesting.
Well said. Just enough, but not doing too much.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect. How do you stay inspired musically and creatively? Are there certain albums or songs that inspire you and like keep you wanting to create, or do you just, you know, you were telling me earlier, inspiration can be drawn from different places?
Yeah. That's a hard question, man. I think that's like, if you could have a superpower as a creative person, it would probably be creativity all the time, as much as you want, at like 100% all the time. Like, that would be amazing, right? Like, just think about it. But that's not reality for no one. That is not. Doesn't exist. What you can do is try to eliminate everything that kills your vibe, that kills your creativity, that you can kind of control. Like, let's say your phone distracts you, like you get a mess. Like, let's say we're in this interview and this is going great. Like, I love talking to you, and then I look at my phone and I see a message from like I don't know, my lawyer, and that says, oh shit, they didn't blah, 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 blah. Like that would kill my vibe. So I should just not look at my phone. Like if I don't look at my phone, I don't see it, then it is not possible for that to kill my vibe, right? So that kind of stuff, just like tune stuff out that could kill your vibe. And then just be ready for when inspiration hits, and just like accept that it's very situational. Like for me, it's become very situational. It can be 2 hours on top of the world and then gone for like 8 hours. That happens all the time. And I just want to make sure I'm ready when those 2 hours hit, you know?
Yep. Strike the iron while it's hot.
Yeah. And then be fine when it's gone, you know? That's fine. Sometimes I work on music and I'm like, oh man, this is incredible. Best music I've ever made. And then I'm like, I'm done. I don't want to work on this anymore. I hit save. I export it. I always export everything because it's easier to listen to stuff when it's exported in a folder than having to open Ableton projects.
I agree.
So I put it in a folder that says work in progress or starts or whatever. And I hit close, and that's it for the day.
I love that. It definitely like just keeps you inspired, keeps you going, and helps you prevent yourself from overthinking or worrying too much about where the next inspiration is going to come from and how you're going to act on it. You just act on it as it happens instead of searching it out.
Yeah.
I love that. Have you thought about, I mean, you touched a little bit on others releasing through Minta Foundry. Is there any other place you're trying to take Minta Foundry? Like, as far as, you know, would you work with artists and those kind of things as well, and not just sample makers? Or do you see it more as like a music toolkit and like a sample maker kind of brand?
Well, I think the brand is more clear if it stays in the sample maker sound assets kind of field, you know.
Yes.
Anything can happen. I think the sample making field is gonna change a lot. It has changed a lot. It's gonna change a lot. I don't know where it will go. I'm ready to reshape the brand if needed, but I'm also ready to just build something new if I have to. I'm also ready to sell or buy or whatever. I'm very open to anything that's going to happen in the future. If I don't own Minta Foundry anymore in 2 years, that's fine. I will own something else that excites me. You know,
I love that. It's a beautiful thing. Just being open and ready for whatever opportunity happens.
Yeah, exactly. And be patient for stuff too, you know. Of course, I would have liked, for example, like when we started Minta Foundry, for example, I looked into distributing through Drum Broker right away because that's the obvious thing you would do. Or like, how do I sell packs? Well, get somewhere where people buy packs. You go on the Drum Broker website, you see where's the contact form, blah, blah. You look there and it says, don't contact us to sell your packs on our website because we get too many packs. And then you're like, okay, well, let's not do that right now. Let's build our own website, you know?
Yes.
Do that. We did that for a year. And then they reached out to us and we're like, oh, we saw your stuff. It's amazing. You want to distribute on Drum Broker. Be patient for stuff to happen. Yes, I could have sent that message still, but it said don't. So I won't, you know?
Yes. Just follow your joy with no expectations, and then just wait for the right opportunities to come your way.
Yeah, I'm very ready for stuff to happen. And actually, that's the way I think about like also practicing and getting better at stuff. Is like, for example, 4 years ago, if you had asked me like, what would you want to happen tomorrow? And I would have maybe said like, oh, I wish Drake would call me to executive produce his album. Like,
yes,
I'm so glad that didn't happen because I was definitely not ready. I was definitely not ready for that kind of stuff. I wouldn't even have been ready for Timbaland to hit me up or OZ to hit me up. I wasn't ready for anything. And so what I do now is just make sure I am ready when that kind of stuff happens. If it does, and if not, that's fine too. But you know, stuff will happen, and the thing that I can do is just make sure I'm ready as I can be when it does.
I love that. That's fantastic. We'll move on to my For the Nerds section. This will be just some of the more technical
Yes.
musical things like
Sure.
that. What are some of your most regularly used plugins and VSTs?
I'm a big fan of UAD plugins. So most of them are going to be UAD. That's Fairchild, Fairchild compressor, the API EQs. The new Hitsville EQ by UAD is incredible. Love that. For boosting the highs, it sounds incredible. I like the ATR 102, the Ampex tape machine, and the EMT 140 plate reverb. I think those are the UAD plugins, the ones that I use most. And then non-UAD, I'm a big fan of Sound Toys. I like Effect Track. I like Echo Boy Junior. Echo Boy is fine, is great too. But just Echo Boy Junior is very easy to use, so that's why I use it.
Definitely.
RC20 is an incredible plugin. I keep saying it's just, I don't know, just when I started using it, I thought I had understood everything it could do in the first hour. But then when I started to make the preset packs for it, I just realized there's so much stuff you can do with it. It's incredible. So I use RC20 a lot, but I'm like I said, I'm very mindful of, for example, tape wobble. Like, it's fine to have different distortions in one project, but it's not fine to have different wobbles if you try to get like an authentic sound. It doesn't work.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what are some of the most regularly used instruments or pieces of gear that you use on a regular basis?
Right now, it's the drums that I use. It's a kit from the 70s, like a Pearl kit, which is interesting. It was the backline drums at the Montreux Jazz Festival for many years. So I don't know who played on that, but it was probably some legends. Yes. I was very lucky to get that kit. It was a gear exchange. I actually do this quite often, like exchange gear with someone. I had a Fender Rhodes. That was before I started to make samples, so I didn't know I would want a Fender Rhodes. But that's fine. I needed drums because I was gonna head on tour with a band, and I needed to play the drums on that tour. So I needed a drum kit, and I had this friend, and he was like, "Oh, do you want to exchange a drum kit for the Fender Rhodes?" I'm like, "Yeah, let's do it." So he gave me that drum kit. I gave him my Fender Rhodes. And so the drums, the piano, and
what kind of piano?
Yeah, I think it's a Yamaha C3. Again, I was very lucky. Like, the instruments I have, to be honest, I got so lucky with those instruments. Like the drum kit, I traded for my Rhodes. The piano, it was an old Yamaha that was in a jazz club in Zurich. And that jazz club closed down a couple of years ago. And they did like a whole sale where they would just sell anything they had. All the microphones, the cables, even like the glasses from the bar. Like they sold everything.
Yeah.
My dad went there because he knew the guy, and so he looked around. He was like, "What about the piano?" And the guy was like, "I don't know, man, I'm selling it." He's like, "How much?" And I can't remember the exact number, but it was just ridiculously low. Like, it's like a ridiculously low price that he paid for the piano. So yeah, now it's here. I got super lucky.
It seems like there's this like magic with a lot of the instruments you have, where, you know, the drum kit was this Montreux Jazz Festival kit. This piano was this jazz lounge piano that so many people have played on. Yeah, even the guitars that I know your father like finds all these vintage guitars and really makes them like playable and usable again. And there's something like magic about when I feel like you have an old instrument that's been played by other people. I have a 1961 Harmony H75 guitar, and something about these vintage guitars, or like any vintage instrument that's been played before, there's like magic in there. I feel like that's like the spirit of the person that's played it before is in that instrument, and you can pick up on it.
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because I consider myself a very non-esoteric person. but still there is some kind of voodoo that goes on with those older instruments. I don't know. I it's
who knows
weird.
what it
It's
is,
weird.
but you can
Who knows
feel
what
you
it
can
is.
feel it, you know.
Yeah.
Do you play all the instruments that we hear in your sample packs like live, and or is there also like kind of like a hybrid version of programming as well?
Like the only contact bank that I use is the LA scoring strings for string orchestra type sounds. The rest I play everything myself. No.
Do you record everything to the Uher tape machine that you have?
Not everything. I had a phase where I was doing that, and I love those samples. That was beginning of like the whole 2020 vibe was just everything through that tape machine. Everything's very noisy, very distorted, very mono. I love those samples, but I kind of, moved on a bit from it. I still use it a lot, but a little less now. But I record everything through my API preamps that I got last year, so I love that sound. And for guitar, it's usually through the guitar amp, bass, usually DI, and I have a couple of Reslo mics for the drums and the vibraphone and the percussions, and I have AKG C414s, BULS. These are the vintage ones, not the super vintage ones, but the kind of vintage ones for the piano. Again, I got a great deal on those. I got very lucky with with gear,
I love it.
prices, and also, I mean, everybody knows that I make music, and like everybody I know knows that I make music, so it happens all the time that people are just like, oh, I have a bass that I don't use. You want to have it? Like the other day, one of my friends, I helped him build his studio because he had it's very funny. He's a very successful producer with a lot of plays on Spotify and shit. But his setup was very like bedroom style, no patch bay, no preamps and shit. And so he called me and was like, you know what, I'm ready to level up. So I helped him incorporate the tape machine into his setup. We picked up a patch bay. I helped him set up the the mic pre's and everything. And then he was just like, you know what? I have this Nagra tape machine that I really don't use. Do you want to like have it for a while? And I'm like, yeah, sure. It's
of course.
It costs like $4,000 or something. Yeah, sure.
I'll definitely take that off your hands for a little while.
So I have it in my studio right now, and as soon as he wants it back, I'll just give it back.
But hey, fair deal to me.
Yeah.
Do you still have the connection for those Uher tape machines?
I do, yes. I actually, I talk to that person quite often. They actually modified my Uher tape machine. They added a very speed to it, so now I can change the speed in between the 7.5 inch and the 3/3/4, so I can get like, It's very dope. It's very dope. I was just on the phone with them, and then for a repair, and then she told me like, oh, by the way, I'm doing this mod for another client. Do you want it? And I'm like, hell yeah, that sounds great. That's what I like about cassette decks. Like a lot of cassette decks have very speed, and not many of the tape machines do. Like I have a Revox B77 MK1. The MK2 has very speed. I don't have the very speed on that one, so I'm always like, man, that would be amazing. So when she built the very speed into my Uher mono tape machine, that was amazing. I love it.
I love that. That is a great mod. Do you ever find yourself like, kind of, if there's a sound running through the tape machine, do you ever kind of like take a pencil or something and like tap the tape as it's running, or like slow down the wheel and like let it kind of wobble or create a weird pitch, kind of janky kind of thing?
Yeah, 100%. That's how you test if the tape machine is actually on, because sometimes, especially on the bigger ones like the Revox, it has such a clean sound. It doesn't even sound that distorted. So sometimes you're like, is it even on? So then you just touch the tape and it's like, and then you're like, oh yeah, it's on. So I do that. Sometimes. I don't exaggerate it anymore. But I still use that effect sometimes.
Well, I definitely, as I'm working my job now and I'm gathering income again, I'm gonna probably reach out through you for the tape machine plug.
Sure.
Because you're the guy.
Of course. Of course.
How important is leaving space in your samples and productions, whether that's space between chords like silence or leaving out a bass part or something so it makes it easier for a producer to add their own bass and drums?
I'm not sure I think about this very often, actually. The records that I produce are more like the music that I make is inspired by the time where they definitely didn't think about how is this going to be used in hip hop music. So I tend to not think about it too much either. But probably in the last stage, like the arranging, where I'm like, okay, like let's not be stupid about this. Let's maybe think about the person that comes after. Then I would sometimes, for example, take the whole arrangement, just copy it, and then remove the drums, for example, or remove the bass, or remove the vocal chop, or whatever it is, just to give them the option, not having to hit me back and be like, oh, can you send me another version? So yeah, I guess I think about it, but just in the very last step.
Okay, you're not like actively deciding this as you're making the sample. Like where you're like,
I
I'm
don't.
gonna hard cut the guitar on the 3, like where the snare hits or like those kind of things.
No, absolutely not. No, I don't do that.
I love that. It's unique to your own style, because I know for me when I'm working on things now, it's like I'm always trying to find this, at least more and more lately, it's like I'm trying to find this balance of, having more silence in it than just necessarily filling up every possible space with music.
Well, I try to have silence in there, but not because of this clap that someone is going to add in the end.
Yes. Smart. Definitely smart. What are some of your favorite ways to transform or reshape a sound, or maybe ways that you feel like aren't being utilized enough?
Well, my favorite is probably just run it through Tape Machine. That's what gives it a vibe that I really like. Something that is not done enough is probably re-recording in different rooms. So, for example, have like a speaker in the hallway of your building or the garage or whatever, and a mic, and then re-record the sounds through that space. That is something that is not done enough, and it's just like real acoustic spaces sound a million times better than the emulated plugin versions. Like, let's say, for example, you have an actual tape machine and a VST tape machine. These come very close. The VST tape machine gets to maybe, I don't know, I'm just inventing something, 85% authenticity, right? 85% realness. Okay, now reverbs, room reverbs, VST versus real room reverb, we're talking like 10-15%.
Yeah, not even close.
No, it's just there's so much there's so much going on in a reverberant space that no plugin can capture. So using actual spaces for recording your instruments is just it's incredible. Like every time I do it, I'm like, wow, I'm blown away by it.
So well said. I know one trick, I think it was Stupid Lou that mentioned it to me, but if you write like a Keyscape piano or something, pulling out your iPhone and then recording it coming out of the speakers into your room, like that's a great way to get a natural room sound. That way it's not just this, cold digital signal. Yeah. So I'm definitely going to apply that more. Like I know you can maybe take certain stems, like this gave me in the concept the idea of taking certain stems, maybe bouncing them out, having them dry. And like I have like an abandoned hotel that's near my house that has this really tall stairwell. I've recorded in there before, like just some guitar and things. And so being able to maybe take a small speaker, like a Beats pill or something, going to this space with these dry stems and then recording the dry stems in this reverberant space is totally going to add a new color to the sound.
Oh, and didn't you send me a video once of like you recording some claps in that like echoey, weird...
It's so wild.
What is it?
So it's like a water. It's almost like a wash. Like if it rains very heavy and it needs it's like this huge. Basically, what it is it's these huge concrete walls, and they come in like a triangular shape. So when you clap at the big open end, as the sound travels further away from you, it bounces and gets narrower. So the delay speed in a way of the clap speeds up. It's like. And I've recorded stuff there before. I'll send you. I have an iPhone textures pack that I've recorded, and I plan on releasing it for free. So I'll just send it to you now. It's pretty much done, but it has I have some flute stuff there. I have just some percussion things that I recorded there. So I'll send that through, and you can definitely feel free to utilize it.
Oh, cool. Have you looked into impulse response recordings? Have you looked into that?
I've heard about them very briefly, and I've kind of seen what they are a little bit, but I feel like that's something worth getting into.
Yeah, it's something you could start creating. You go to that abandoned hotel, you need speakers, microphone, and then there's, I think, a Waves plugin that kind of just records it for you. You just hit record, it sends a sound, it records it, and then it spits out the impulse response. And then you can do you can share them with other people.
I'm gonna definitely look into that. That's worth it, especially if I have all these great places and acoustic spaces nearby. Might as well do it.
Yeah, sure.
Thank you for the advice. I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course.
What are some of the most underrated or slept on? Well, I guess we touched on it a little bit. Plugins or pieces of gear. Is there anything else you could think of that's maybe slept on or not utilized enough or could be used more?
Nope. I can't think of anything right now.
Pretty much touched them all.
Yeah.
What is some secret sauce that you wish you had known earlier on when you started out making samples?
Well, that's a hard question.
Definitely is.
Let me think about it for a second.
Of course.
Well, I think when I started, I produced everything in the box, and then it was Mario was like, try to do this with real instruments, and that was kind of what unlocked everything for me. So I guess if I had known that earlier, I don't know. The reason why it's hard for me to answer this question is because wish I'd known that earlier implies that I'm not happy with the way things went. It implies that I wish things had been different, and I really never think about it that way. I'm very grateful for everything that happened how it did, because that's why I'm where I'm at right now. You know what I'm saying? That's why I find it hard to yes. I don't hate any period of that happened. I might have not been very happy in that moment. There was a moment where I was not happy with the music I was creating, but I'm still happy it happened. Especially now it's in the past. It doesn't bother me anymore. I'm just glad that it led to the next thing that then led to the next thing that brought me here.
How did you get through that kind of darker period where you weren't as satisfied with the music that you were creating?
How did I get through it? Maybe I can answer how I got out of it. Is by just stop doing it. Just be like, you know what? The way when it hit me was whenever I told people about what I was doing in life, like, oh, you're a musician, that's amazing. And I was like, yes, but what I do, I hate. So it was always this people were so excited, and I was always so not excited about it. And that kind of freaked me out, because I was like, well, that's really strange. People expect you to do something you love when you take that path, And then when I reflected on it, I was like, I really don't actually love it. So I then fixed that. I was like, I need to fix this because that's not normal. I should be able to enjoy it to a certain point. Obviously, there's always things that are annoying, that give you headaches. But we should try to be as happy as we can with the music that we make.
Very well said. I couldn't agree more with that sentiment. 100%. All right, we'll move on to my final 5. These will be my last 5 questions for you. They can be one sentence or one word. They don't have to be very long if you don't want them to be. But if you feel like you want to elaborate on an answer, feel free to.
Okay.
What is something you wish more people did in their music?
I guess just be more experimental. Be less. Try less to sound like somebody else. It's just
yes.
If you're trying to sound like somebody else, then you need to be better than that person, because otherwise nobody's gonna care about you. And then we get into that who's better at doing something. But if you're just the only person doing something, then it doesn't really matter how good you are. It's not a competition. It's just about, it's very unique. It stands on its own.
Well said. What is something that used to be important to you that you no longer care about?
I guess I used to care about like who wants to work with me. Like there were a lot of people also, especially in Switzerland and in the Zurich scene, that I really would have loved to work with, that I tried to connect to. And whenever that didn't happen, I felt like it was, my music is not good enough. I'm not, they don't care about me, whatever. And that's when I just started to focus on my music, just do my thing. And that's when then people started to reach out to me. So I used to care a lot about like who is interested in what I do. And I don't care about that anymore. I just do my thing, and I'm blessed that people are interested in what I do now.
I love that. That is so fantastic to hear, that you let go of something like that, and now it just brought you so much more joy and peace.
Oh, yeah.
Just creating what you love and letting the world just show you the love and appreciation. I love that. What would you say is the best way for a sample maker to improve their samples?
If your samples involve real instruments, practice your instruments. If not, that's totally fine. Some of my favorite samples don't have any real instruments in there. If not, then probably research more music that is not sample music, that is not hip hop. Listen to other music. Like if your whole horizon is the music that you create, if that works out, great. But if it doesn't work out, if you feel like you're hitting walls, then try to expand by listening to other music, because there is so much valuable information in a classical music recording, for example, or even like in a live performance of a classical orchestra. I mean, go experience music like that. That's a whole different world. Like actual instruments hitting you in the face with sound waves. It's incredible. It's so emotional. Yeah. So go do stuff like that. I'm very happy that I had a whole music career or environment where a lot of different styles of music played a role in shaping who I am right now. So I can still profit from all that music that I experienced back in the days.
Definitely, those years of gigging and playing jazz and those kind of things helped you create this Al Hug sound now that you can hear Spanish guitar influence, you can hear old Western movie influence, you can hear jazz, you can hear old hip hop, you can hear all these different things, and it's just authentically yourself at the end of the day through your experience.
Yes.
It's amazing. What is the worst advice you've ever received?
The worst advice. I think fake it till you make it is like a terrible advice. That's terrible.
Yeah.
That's just, I think, let's say it this way. Faking to like help you feel comfortable in a situation, that's okay, I guess. Like let's say you get into a situation that is very stressful for you, maybe it triggers your anxiety, and then you just kind of fake it and you're like, let me just hold it together. That's fine. But
Yes.
pretending to be more successful than you are until you are more, that's just stupid. Just do the work, and stuff will happen. Maybe it doesn't. Just don't fake it. That's stupid.
Just be authentic. Don't fake it.
Yeah, no.
love that.
Also, like lying is probably the most stupid thing you can do, because it will always like bite you in the ass. Like
The truth always comes out. The lies only go so far, but as soon as the truth comes out, it makes it hard to take anything you say with like credibility.
Yeah.
And my final question for you is, what is the best advice you've ever received?
It's a small thing. It's I listened to a Blab Chat episode a while back, like 3-4 years ago, and someone in the group was saying, don't follow up when you send something. Like let's say you send a pack in an email. Don't be the person who like 3 days later is like, oh, did you see the pack? Did you get it? Yes, they got it. It's email. Like
Yes.
it doesn't fail usually. There is probably a reason why they haven't reached got in contact with you. So don't push stuff too much. Just send more music. Just send another pack. The second pack is going to be a reminder for the first pack, and the third pack is going to be a reminder for the first and the second pack, and so on. And this leads you to making more music, not spending your time kind of pushing people to finally listen to your music. Like, be persuasive, but don't push people. Like, people hate that. I hate it. I hate when people push me to do something that I don't decided to do on my own.
Definitely. You'd rather,
Yeah.
it's way more valuable to inspire somebody to act on something than it is to
Yes.
push them into a situation that makes them uncomfortable and then not want to work with you in the future, because they can just
Yes.
tell you're in it for yourself. You're not in it for the value of everybody.
Yeah, 100%. 100%.
That's amazing. Well, thank you so much for taking all this time with me today, Al. Like, I know it was an early morning for you. It was a late night for me, but this was an incredible conversation, and I'm so glad we got to reconnect like this and share all this information and knowledge with everybody. I look forward to seeing the future of Minta. I'm excited to see who's going to be the next sample maker or the first person to come out other than yourself on the Foundry. I'm excited to see the next guitar pedals or plugins, whatever it is you're doing next. Like, I'm staying tuned. I'm keeping my ear to the ground, and I'm just very proud to see all the progress you've made from when me being your very first student of a sample making course to where you're at now. It's just amazing and inspiring, and I can't thank you enough for all the value you've added to my life.
Well, thank you for saying that, and I hope you keep doing this podcast, because it's very valuable to the whole community, and I hope you keep doing it for very long, and that you interview every sample maker so that we can do a round 2 in 2 years or something. I don't know.
That's
when
the
you
plan.
interviewed everybody, you're just gonna do another round, and
Yeah, man.
these are gonna be very interesting conversations. I feel like if we have this conversation again in 2 years, man, this is going to be interesting.
It's going to be a whole new world. I mean, it's like we were talking about
Yeah.
earlier. It's sample making today is different than it was 2 years ago, you know?
Definitely, yeah, definitely.
That's amazing. Well, I'll end the podcast here, and we'll call it a day.